Yo, buddies. Hey, it's Concert Buddy. Vinyl Community Podcast in full effect. Back with a fantastic interview, and it's so fantastic we had to double the flavor, double the fun. We've got two hosts. You know them, you love them. It's my co-conspirator on Surface Noise, Spinz Vinyl. Jason, what's a good word, sir?
Things are good, man. What's up, everybody? Looking forward to this one, Chance.
It's going to be great. And it's going to be great because, one, we have a great guest, and two, we've merged, we're mind melding. We're like the mega powers, Hogan and Savage, joining forces to interview Wayne Johnson. He's the co-owner, co-founder of Rockaway Records, a famous record store in Silver Lake, California. Wayne, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just great. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, real pleasure and a real honor, actually. I've actually seen, I think I've seen you indirectly at some of the record shows, been making the circuits. Like, I think you probably, I'm sure I've seen you in Austin. You've probably done the Austin show. Were you at WFMU in the fall? I know I was there.
No, I haven't done WFM in a while. My brother Gary does that one. That's his show. We each have different shows that we like to do.
Oh, okay. So he's the WFMU.
Austin. Exactly. We have our friends in the different places, and I love going to the record shows. They're a lot of fun. They're not quite the way they used to be as far as sales go, but they're still great fun.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll get into that later. I love talking record shows for sure. Now, Spinz is going to kick us off. He's going to share some awesome nugs about Rockaway, and then we're gonna hit you with the hard ones, Wayne. I hope you're ready. Hope you wore the bulletproof vest.
I'm ready.
All right.
So, I mean, just some highlights, Wayne, as I'm looking at this. 45 years in the record store game, buying and selling some of the most unique and rare music. Not just records, but memorabilia. Regular customers include, guys, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, Steven Tyler, Chris Robinson. These are regulars. And in just the last 2 years, the Los Angeles-based store Rockaway Records acquired and sold Abbey Road recording consoles used by the Beatles, Pink Floyd, Jeff Beck, largest Creedence Clearwater Revival memorabilia collection, the MTV Moon Man statuette from Pearl Jam's Jeremy music video. And it's just endless. It's a bottomless pit if you check out the website. I mean, Wayne, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, and Steven Tyler, I mean, what's that like? Is it kind of crazy when you hear that? Or is it you just kind of take it for granted at this point?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, it's been a little while since Jimmy's been in here. He's one of my favorites. I met him at a record show in London. Funny story, if you got a second to hear it.
Of course.
It's like I was set up at the Olympia record show in London. I used to set up there regularly, and I had a Led Zeppelin concert flyer from 1969 in Pasadena. I forget the venue. It was on display. It was a $300 item. And I was talking to an old friend of mine, and this guy comes along and says, "Can I look at that flyer?" And I handed it to him, ignored him. I didn't recognize him, unfortunately. So I kept talking to my friend and ignored him. And he handed it back to me and walked away. And my friend said, "You know who that was, don't you?" I said, "No idea. That was Jimmy Page." Luckily, he walked to the next booth, who was a real good friend of mine. And he said to him, "Who's that dealer next to you? He's got some great stuff." So he brought him back to me and introduced me. And, we talked a lot. And, he came back 2 times over the weekend to look at the flyer and kept putting it back. And finally I said, "Here, Jimmy, just take it." And then we kind of hit it off after that. And, and I said, "Hey, next time you're in LA, come to my store." And he's been here twice. He was like a kid in a candy store. Great guy, too. Very down to earth for one of the all-time greatest guitarists in the world. Very mellow, low-key, just a pleasure to deal with.
That's awesome, man. Well, I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine. That must be so cool. You kind of walking on a cloud after that probably for a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Waiting for the next time he comes in.
What do you got, Chance?
Well, I was going to say, why don't we talk about, let's just start. It's like everyone likes a good origin story. So let's start at the beginning, Wayne. Let's talk about the motivation, inspiration, and I'm sure a lot of times perspiration involved in opening a record store. You guys, I mean, I'm not trying to give you too much information, but the store's been open as long as I've been on the celestial plane. So I know that's been a hot minute. Take us back to 45 years ago and the idea to open a record store, I believe, with your brother. Gary is one. Was there any other family involved?
My brother Gary.
Okay. Okay. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
there is. I'll get into that shortly. Let's start from the beginning. Both Gary and I have been music lovers since we were little kids. Grew up with music. You know, when I was 10 years old, and probably for 5 years, I didn't go anywhere without my transistor radio. Just crazy music lovers. But neither of us knew anything about collectibles. I didn't know there was a collectible record market, to be honest with you. But my brother Gary worked at a local record store. Nothing to do with collectibles. In those days, it was vinyl and 8 tracks. And he heard about this record swap meet in Hollywood called the Capitol Swap Meet. And he said, why don't we go there? And it was the first Saturday night of every month. And I was in my 20s. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to go to some old swap meet to look at old records. But finally, after he bugged me for about 6 months, I said, all right, Gary, I'll take you to this swap meet. And it just opened both our eyes. Because like I said, we loved music, but we didn't know a used record had any value at all. And looking at all these records, some of which I had, you know, just by chance, that were, in those days, $50 or $100 was a lot of money for a rare record. Now it's a little bit different. But it got us really excited. And I used to go to yard sales and swap meets all the time, not for records. I used to be a TV repairman. I used to buy old TVs, fix them up, and sell them. That was my profession before this. So I was already going to swap meets, but never bent down to look at a box of records. Never knew they had value. But after going to this swap meet, me and Gary learned a little bit, and he started coming with me to these yard sales and swap meets, and we started picking up old records, and we set up at the next month's Capitol Swap Meet, and we actually made $400, and I was thrilled. And we did it again. We started learning very quickly. We didn't know a whole lot. 90% of the stuff we bought at yard sales was junk that we had to give away. But we did pick up some good stuff, and we learned quickly. The second month, we made $2,000, which in those days was quite a lot of money.
not bad.
So
Yeah.
it just basically grew from there. And it just grew from there. And then what really put us on the map was Goldmine magazine. Are you guys familiar with Goldmine magazine?
Yes. Yes. Goldmine magazine, often considered the standard
Yeah,
of the record collector environment.
Yeah, not too much. I'll be honest with you, not too important today. Most print things aren't. But in those days, it was the Bible for record collecting. There was no internet. There wasn't
Right.
even price guides out in those days. So that we did our first ad in Goldmine magazine. The phones literally would ring off the hook nonstop. I'd be on the phone all day, just pick it up, pick it up. We get calls from all over the world because in those days, like I said, there was no internet. So people loved promotional records in Europe and that, US promos, and they had no access to them. And we had a whole page full of Bowie 12-inch promos. And the other thing that was really big in those days, this was 1979. Picture discs was the hottest thing. Picture discs were more collectibles than Beatle records in those days. And we got a lot of them. You know, being in LA, a lot of the record companies were there, all the promo people. So I remember the thing that really got us tons of orders. There was a rare Toto octagonal shaped promo picture disc, and it was very rare. It was going for $75 in those days, which was a fortune. And I happened to made contacts with people at Fitzgerald Hartley, the company that made them. They had a pallet load of them sitting in their office there that they didn't distribute, which is why it was so rare. So I listed that at Goldmine for $15, and everybody went crazy. There were people from Germany ordering 5 of them and just all over the world. So that really got us started. And then we kind of specialized in picture discs and promos, and it just grew from there. And we didn't even have a store until about 83, I believe. We were just strictly mail order, doing it out of my basement. You know, and then in 81, we got our first warehouse in West LA. And then 83, we bought a small record store called Rainbow Records, which is just down the street from where we are now. Little 700 square foot store, which we outgrew in less than 2 years. We moved to a store triple the size. We outgrew that very quickly. And then we bought our first building, which was about 3,000 square feet. Business was growing so fast, Well, the building we bought was an old rundown bar, which we had to remodel and turn it into a record store. Before construction was done, I told Gary, this is too small. So, I mean, we ended up staying there for about 4 years, and business was just crazy, just constantly growing. And then I knew we needed more space, but I kind of went a little too crazy. I think it was because I went into the first Amoeba Records in San Francisco. And it blew my mind. Yeah, I mean, have you guys been to Amoeba?
Yeah. So you're talking about the old bowling alley, right? Yeah. Yep.
That's my old stomping ground, Bay Area in California.
Me.
So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that kind of inspired me to get a big store. So we tripled our size. And this was before Amoeba came to LA. So we became the biggest record store in Los Angeles for a few years until Amoeba came to town. But to be honest with you, I learned bigger is not better. Sales really didn't go up that much. Overhead went up drastically.
Sure.
So over the years, we've been downsizing, aiming rather than quantity, quality, and now we've shrunken to probably 20% of the size we were when we were the biggest, but we're doing better than ever. The overhead's down. When we had the big store, we had at least 20 employees. So big payroll, a lot of headaches in that. Now, got 5 great employees that really know their stuff. And we're an appointment-only store, so we've got flexibility, and it's just a pleasure. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, I kind of wish I did this sooner. We did it actually because of COVID. COVID forced us to, shut down for a few months, and slowly we opened by appointment only. And I found out, well, this is kind of nice, and since then we just never changed. Unfortunately we disappointed a lot of people, but from a business point of view, I had no choice. I mean, the overhead was killing us, selling. We sell $5 CDs and DVDs, and the labor and the space, it just wasn't worth it. It's just not our thing. I mean, let Amoeba do that. They do a great job for a variety of stuff, but our expertise is the collectibles. And we're putting more and more effort into that. And over the last few years, just seeing some of the most amazing things coming in. And after 45 years, this stuff still excites me. I go out looking at collections. I travel looking at collections in that. Last year I went to Scotland to buy a collection, which was amazing. And I still get a kick out of it. It's just a lot of fun.
Well, Wayne, you touch on a lot of things, I guess a lot of startups, small businesses kind of empathize with, right? Like building the plane as you fly it, learning about what your customers want, size, overhead, all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like hopefully a lot of our listeners can kind of identify with the way your business has evolved, grown, evolved, changed, shrunk, right, etc. over the years. Spinz, what say you?
Yeah, I was gonna say, first of all, it must have taken a lot of discipline in those early days, because I think a lot of us would have been like snatching that stuff up for our own collection, but you had it in mind, like, it seems like you already had pre-built this strategy in mind that you wanted to get those records out to the good people and build a business out of it. So if you're going, it's all around the world to get these collections and records and memorabilia, do you have kind of a steady, and especially now since you're sort of by appointment only, is there a steady list of customers that you, in your mind, you're already thinking, oh, I know who would want this kind of a thing?
Yeah, well, we do, of course, have a lot of good customers in that I do save things for it, but to be honest with you, most of the time, the really cool stuff, I don't want to sell too quick. I want to kind of display it in our showroom and on the website and that. So a lot of times I purposely will not call people because I'm not in a hurry to sell the great stuff. We do buy some lower end stuff too, because a lot of times I have to buy the whole collection, and that stuff, yeah, I price it to sell, but when something amazing comes in, like say a Rolling Stones Street Fighting Man sleeve. I don't know if you're familiar with that, the rarest Rolling Stones sleeve. I want to keep it in stock for a little while. If I price it exactly right, it sells instantly. So I'll price it a little bit higher. Sometimes it'll sell. Sometimes a couple months later, I'll lower it a little bit and then it'll sell. But the cool stuff, I love having. I'm not a collector personally. I mean, everybody asks me, "Oh, you must have an amazing collection." I say, "I sort of do. It's my store. It just changes every day, and I'm happy with that." I
There
mean,
you go.
when I first started, I did have that dilemma because I mean, I'm a huge Beach Boy fan. That's my group, and I was seeing all this cool Beach Boys stuff coming in, and I started collecting it all. And then finally, I said to my brother Gary, "Are we going to make this a business or a hobby? I'm going to stop collecting for now. Let's focus on the business. I'll collect later." But you know, now sure I can afford to collect all that stuff now, but it doesn't mean as much to me now, the material stuff. You know, I've got to know Brian Wilson personally, got to hang out with him quite a few times, and I've got all the music, I've got the unreleased music, and the material stuff just doesn't mean that much to me anymore. So I've got no real desire to be a real collector. You know, I'd rather just get the stuff in and display it, maybe keep it for a little while, and then sell it to people around the world that love it.
I like that.
Very nice.
Well, you're talking, Wayne, about your brother Gary. I mean, one thing when I was learning about your business, it was what's it like working with family? I mean, because it can go a lot of different ways. Because obviously, family's family, but business is business. So how do you find working with your brother, or at least building this business with your brother? And is there any challenges that outside of the obvious?
There's been a few. I mean, Gary's not a businessman at all. He's probably the world's most knowledgeable person on collectible vinyl. I don't think there's anybody in the world that can equal him. He's an expert on every classic rock group, but he also knows a lot about jazz records, classical records, hip hop records. No, I'd be surprised if anybody is his equal with his knowledge. That, but on the other hand, he was more in favor of, he likes the mom and pop record store, you know, which we had for the longest time in that, and you know, I could tell we needed to focus more on the collectibles. That's where we kind of disagreed. Even though he's incredible with collectibles, he still likes the mom and pop record store, and he actually misses that. You know, even though we're doing better than it ever, you know, as a business point of view, you know, we did disappoint a lot of customers. You know, we went from probably 50 customers a day to maybe 4 or 5 customers a day. So, I mean, I was a little sad about that. If it wasn't for COVID, I may have never changed like this. That kind of forced us to change now. And now I think he's accepted it. It's just not the direction he wanted to go, but it is working. So, and I think he enjoys seeing all these amazing things coming in too.
I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, but it's interesting. You talk about adapting, right? And I'm thinking back to the old president of Nike, Mark Parker. He said, "Adapt or die," and that's true. I mean, sometimes you've probably run into these kind of make or break moments, building your business, refining your business, where you know, hey, Gary wants to keep digging for records and going through records and building these collections and that sort of thing. There's that all power to it, but you know, unfortunately, you got to pivot the business in a way that makes sense. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, right, Wayne?
Yeah, the bottom line, not the top line. I'll be honest with you, in the early days, I was more impressed with that top line, getting sales up. But that's irrelevant. It's left after you pay all payrolls, the rent, and all the other expenses. The top line means nothing now. It's the bottom line that, you know, as a businessman, you have to worry about.
Well, you guys have really differentiated yourself, obviously, in terms of going to a high-end kind of collectible model. And obviously with the pandemic and how you guys really pivoted, also seems like a lot of record stores started popping up, and there's a ton of potential competition. Is that something that you guys feel, or is there more or less competition now? Is it different because you guys are really kind of specialized, or do you still kind of feel that? Is there more competition now?
There's a ton of competition for the low-end vinyl. There's probably 25 record stores in LA that want the low-end vinyl. Well, they want the collectibles too, but there's very few stores in LA that have our expertise. And when somebody has a high-end collection and they know what it's worth, they usually come to us because none of our competitors will pay the prices we will. You know, the high end stuff, I'll pay whatever it takes. You know, I've had other stores offer $10 for a record where I paid $1,000 for it. You know,
Wow.
I don't want to mention any names of stores, but well-known stores. But you know, and the difference with us, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of record stores that if you're going with a pile of records and you don't know what you got, they're not going to tell you. We will. I mean, one time we had a kid walk in our store with leftovers from a yard sale, still had 25-cent price stickers on it, and he couldn't sell them. We paid him $100 for one of them, and he almost fainted on the spot. He couldn't believe us, but it was like a $200 record. So we were happy, he was happy, and that's the way we do business. But as far as competition, we actually work with a lot of the local record stores because a lot of times people want to sell the whole collections, and most of the time, most people's collection, 90% of the value could be in 10% of the records, which is what I want. So I partner up with one of the local record stores, and he's happy to buy the $10, $20 records. I pay him really, really well for the good stuff, and he buys all the rest and pays a fair price. Because like I said, the cheap stuff does sell. Don't get me wrong. The $10 and $20 records we're selling very, very well, but it's just not worth our overhead for us. But it is for most of the other stores. So the local record stores aren't our competition. Unfortunately, our biggest competition is actually the auction houses for the great stuff. You know, people see the prices from the auction houses and they think they're going to get rich on their collection. What they don't realize is that the prices these auction houses advertise is the top 1% of their sales. In most of the big auction houses, 90% of the stuff that sells, people would make more money from me cash up front. I buy a lot of stuff in the auction houses because they go too cheap, and even eBay. You know, so that's my competition. You know, Heritage, Julian's, they get some amazing stuff, and it's a little hard to compete with them. They're like billion-dollar companies. But I am getting, you know, I'm getting a decent share. I'm not complaining, but I always want more.
That's fine. Kind of piggyback on the competition piece. How do you, in a competitive place, even for the collectibles, dealing with the auction houses, is it getting harder to develop leads? Like, how do you? I'm very interested in how you source what you bring in to sell. Is it? It's probably a combination: word of mouth, networking. Is it as easy as somebody just calls and shows up with some really cool stuff? Kind of walk us through that, especially in the competitive landscape of there's a lot of places to go with this stuff.
Okay. Probably most of our collections come in from word of mouth and referrals. And unfortunately, a lot of the collections we're getting these days are from widows, from collectors that are passing away. I mean, a lot of our customers have been with us for 45 years now, and they're in their 70s and stuff. And unfortunately, you know, we don't live forever. And most of our customers have told well, first of all, probably 95% of our customers are male. You know, very few female.
Shocking news.
Yeah. So most of them have told their wives if something ever happens to me, call Rockaway, because they know we're going to take care of them. Whereby with other dealers, they don't know who they're going to if they just ask around. So we are getting a lot of collections that way. And the other collections we get in, which are some of my favorite collections, are people that worked in the music business, people that worked at Warner Brothers, Capitol Records. They have some of the most amazing collections, you know, and there's nobody that can deal with a collection like that as well as we do because it's so diversified. They usually have vinyl collections, gold record awards, autographs, concert t-shirts, and we deal with all that stuff and pay really well on the good stuff. And it's like most of the time with those kind of people, it's not like a collector. A collector paid top retail, they know how much they spent, and the collection is not always worth what they paid for it. So sometimes they could be a little disappointed. But with the music industry people, a lot of times they get most of the stuff for free. You know, these are promo items and things that were given to them. So I've gone over people that worked at, say, Warner Brothers, where they had a garage full of records and gold records and memorabilia, and they're expecting me to spend $4,000 or $5,000. I spent like $50,000 with them, you know, and some of them much, much more. You know, especially the people that go way back. You know, the people that started in not that many left that started in the 60s, but even in the 70s. And some of them have 50 or 100 gold record awards, which could be worth quite a lot of money. Autographs are super valuable these days. Vinyl, of course, the right vinyl.
Sure.
But things that a lot of times, stuff that they don't even expect. Like one time we bought a great vinyl collection. And then on the way out, actually Gary bought this collection. On the way out, he met, oh, by the way, do you have any T-shirts? Oh yeah, you want those? He spent more money on the T-shirts than he did on the vinyl collection, because vintage T-shirts can be worth a lot of money.
Yes, that's true.
So,
It is funny.
yeah,
That's
how we.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's how we get a lot of our leads. But also our website. Our website is actually relatively new, and it's getting a lot of hits and a lot of publicity. And actually, Gene Sievers does a great job promoting us. So that's how she found you guys. She does my publicity. So that's, it all helps. Everything helps, because, like I said, I just can't get enough of the great collections.
No, that's great. No, what I was going to say is that's an old yard sale trick. Like, you're there for one thing, and then you just ask. I mean, so Gary, pro move, clearly asking if you have anything else, and then magically, because you don't know unless you ask, right? And that's proof positive. So if people are at home taking notes.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll get emails about. I can't remember the email, but somebody sent me an email with just a few mediocre autographs and stuff like that, and I almost disregarded it. But I said, let me call this person, and I found out they were the worst stuff she had. She had all kinds of great stuff, and was quite an expensive collection. So now I'm kind of very careful about, even if it does sound mediocre, I usually try to talk to people and just make sure.
Well, you're spending a lot of time on the auction, sounds like, and trying to find those good deals when you can. What about, I'm sure you've started to see the graded and encapsulated records that have been popping up quite a bit now. You have any thoughts on that? I mean, is that a market you're interested in getting into? You kind of waiting to see what happens, or not interested?
Not at the vinyl part, not at all. The posters makes kind of sense. The vinyl market, I think, is totally ridiculous. I would be willing to bet that a large percentage of the slab sealed records are phony wraps. It is so difficult to tell an original sealed record. There are people selling them on eBay. I know one guy who spent $50,000 on eBay buying sealed Beatle records, and they were all rewraps. It's scary. It is a lot of fraud on, actually, in all the auctions in that, so, and these people that are slabbing, there's no way they have the expertise to tell an original sealed record. I actually get fooled myself. I've been doing this a long time, and Gary has a way better eye than me. He spots the fine details, so I will not buy sealed records unless it comes from, like, somebody who worked at Capitol who I trust and that. But from a collector, if they look good to me, I'll run them by Gary, and he's got the eye. And sometimes say, yeah, they're good. Other times he says, look at this, and they're phony. It's just too easy to do. You need a shrink wrap machine, and people even peel off old $2.99 price stickers and put them on. So I don't know. I just think that whole slabbing of vinyl records is not good. And plus, I've seen a lot of ones in auction houses where they're listing something as an original first pressing, and by looking at the cover, there's no way of telling if that's the first or second printing. So they really don't have the expertise to do that. With other things, it makes sense. I can see why people like the slab posters. That's a whole different story. That does make sense. I agree with that, and and it is causing prices to rise on the poster. The poster market is kind of going crazy now because of that. And it all started with baseball cards. I mean, they've been doing that for many, many years, and it seems to work. And look where baseball cards are now. Baseball cards sold for $12 million last year. So
baseball cards and comic books.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. It makes all these expensive records I have look so cheap, doesn't it? I mean, it's like the rarest record in the world by the Rolling Stones is $40,000. Yet a terrible condition Honus Wagner baseball card's $1 million.
Yeah.
Makes no sense to me. I mean, I'm a music lover, not a big sports fan or anything. So, but I guess more people like sports and comic books than music.
Yeah, well, and the community's already, for the most part, resistant. And of course, it's still early on the graded and encapsulated vinyl thing. But wow, that's a hot take. Something I hadn't even really considered. That you got to be careful with the whether the authenticity of what you're getting. Like that's a nice tip for people, I think.
Yeah, be careful. And especially on eBay, there's so many things being sold that are not legit, autographs and things like that. Be real careful. Know who you're buying from. There are a lot of reputable dealers on eBay, but there's a lot of not so reputable ones as well.
Yeah, I'm sure like people have probably heard some of these horror stories about these mill markets where they literally just sit and sign a lot of the fraudulent signatures and that sort of thing. What I wanted to ask you, Wayne, a similar vein, like how important or like how deep do you go with the chain of ownership of some of these pieces? Case in point, I was doing a little homework and you gave an interview. Somebody came in and you showed a piece of it was a piece of, I guess, the curtain of the Ed Sullivan show, and the Beatles had signed it, and you told a real good story about the chain of ownership there. So tell us about how important, if it's not somebody you know from one of the labels and somebody you can trust and somebody you know who has firsthand eyes on what happened there, how important is chain of ownership and establishing that and then having that in your pocket as you're positioning these pieces to sell?
Oh, it's so important. We're probably the most careful business in the world as far as autographs is the trickiest thing. I mean, most other things, it's easier to tell if they're legitimate or not. Autographs is the most difficult thing in the world. I mean, even the two leading autograph authenticators in the world, JSA and PSA, a lot of times they disagree. One says it's real, one says it's not. So who do you believe? So basically with us, well, there's two different things. Beatles, the best in the world is Frank Chiazzo. All he does is Beatles. He's been doing it for 40 years. So I trust him completely. On Beatles, his say-so is good enough for me. On other groups, high-end groups, sometimes I require 2 or 3 experts to verify it before I'll even buy it and sell it. I want to put it this way. You can never be, the only way you can be 100% sure is if you saw it with your own 2 eyes. Even the best experts in the world, might only be in the 90s or 99%. With Beatles, I think it's probably 99% because that's all he does. These other companies, they do everything, sports, and I don't know how you could be a so-called expert in every single autograph. It's very, very difficult, which is why, first I start with the provenance. If it's a record company guy who I believe, then I'll go the next step. But I reject probably 90% of the autographs that are offered to me, and there's probably half of them could be real. But I'm the opposite of most auction houses. I assume it's bad before I'll buy it. I mean, our reputation is too important. Our customers trust us explicitly, and I just don't want to take any chances. I'd rather not deal with it if I don't feel right about it.
Yeah. You think is if this is even a thing, Wayne, is this, you feel like we're in kind of a buyer's market or a seller's market right now? Because obviously I think we've had it be pretty common knowledge that we ended up on kind of a bubble, at least in the lower end, like you said, $10-$20 records and that kind of thing. Is it a good time to be a seller or a buyer right now when it comes to vinyl?
That's a good question. I mean, certain things are going way up. Other things are dropping. I mean, the market's, well, let me go back a few years. The 2 years during and after COVID were probably the best years in our 45-year history. People are spending money like crazy. It was definitely a seller's market for a couple of years. About a year ago, things started settling down. I think people spent all their COVID money, the money they saved by not going on vacations and out to eat. So things have settled down. And right now, there's a lot of ups and downs in the market. A lot of changes going on. I hate to say it, but a lot of the classic rock stuff is starting to drop. The 50s stuff dropped a long time ago. The 60s stuff is getting a little softer because a lot of collectors are passing away. These collections are hitting the market. You've got more supply and less demand. So, I mean, even the Beatles, the great stuff is holding its value. Not rising as quickly as it was a few years ago, but the great stuff will always hold its value. the common stuff has got to drop. I mean, hopefully it doesn't get as bad as some of the 50s stuff, but like to give you an idea, Elvis Presley records, we have probably a couple hundred in the store. They're probably 1/3 the price we used to charge 40 years ago, and they sell much slower. So certain things are going down. On the other hand, punk records are skyrocketing. Can't keep them in stock. It's things like, 10 years ago, Misfits, their first single's called Cough Cool. I think it was, 10 years ago, maybe $1,000. We sold 3 copies in the last year between $6,000 to $12,000 each.
Wow.
There's just, and that stuff sells instantly. I almost don't even have to list them. Punk stuff, grunge stuff, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, that stuff is super hot. And yeah, I mean, other things are softening a little. I see a little bit softening of some of the limited edition stuff. I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware of like most new releases that come out now have 3 or 4 different colored vinyls.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them is usually very limited and very expensive.
There's a lot of marketing terms, limited edition, one step, branding, vehicles, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, collectors do love that. And I mean, it has helped the vinyl market tremendously, but I do see a little bit of a slowdown. People getting kind of fed up with it, for the 10th reissue of a certain album. And it's like, it's so expensive because these collectors need to have it all. I remember a few years ago, I bought one of my customers' Beatle collection. So he was out of collecting. And after McCartney's Egypt Station came out, he called to thank me. He said, "You just saved me $1,000. That's what it would cost him to buy all the different colors of that release." Which, I mean, I love McCartney, but that wasn't even a good album, but still would have cost him $1,000 for all the new releases of that record. I think it's a little crazy myself, but I mean, people are still buying them, don't get me wrong, and the record companies are going to keep cranking them out, but I just hope they don't oversaturate the market with them.
Well, that was going to be my question. Do you see all of the reissues that have been happening over the last 5 years or so hurting originals, or are the originals just always going to be strong?
I think so. I mean, it has a slight effect. It does have a slight effect on it, but the important originals, first pressings, and mint condition, that's the key word. I don't think there'll ever be a problem with them going down. Lesser condition ones, yes. Unless it's super rare, you want it near mint. When we started in this business, the difference between a good condition record and a mint record was maybe double or triple. Now it could be 50 times the difference in price. You take something like Meet the Beatles. When somebody called me and I've got an original Meet the Beatles in good condition, it's worth about $20. In mint condition, it's about $500. Sealed could be $3,000 or $4,000. That's the difference condition makes.
Well, all I was going to say is, again, doing my research before we got to this interview, there's this guy named Wayne Johnson who has a quote that said the 3 most important things in collecting vinyl are condition, condition, condition. So must have been a pretty smart guy. Have you heard of him, Wayne?
Absolutely. I think I recollect hearing him once or twice.
Oh, good stuff, good stuff. Spinz, you got anything else where we hit him with the lightning round?
Yeah, no, actually, I got my eyes on the lightning round now. Let's jump right into it.
Cool. All right. Well, this is the part that we encourage you to put your tray tables away, Wayne. Seatbelts may be encouraged. This is the lightning round. We try to just wrap it up with some lighthearted questions, but we could get some really awesome answers. Well, I know we're going to get awesome answers, but I got to ask. Now, you said you're not so much a collector. You've seen it all. You like to have it in the store and then move it on. But I got to ask, what is the most personally exciting or interesting piece you've had or sold?
Oh, that's easy. A surfboard that was owned by Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, that was pictured on the cover of their first album, their third album, and it was just featured in the Disney TV special that the Beach Boys on the Beach Boys, and which we sold it about 5 years ago, and the producer of the show wanted that surfboard on the beach for the movie shoot. So we arranged with the buyer to bring it to Paradise Cove in California. So it was filmed for the movie. But that was, to me, the most exciting item we've sold. I'm biased because I'm a huge Beach Boy fan.
You're like right in that epicenter.
You
You're
want
just
a second
surrounded
one?
by, you're talking about just all of the collectibles that are around you and the music that's happened around you. That is so amazing. If you could reunite one band, Wayne, for one show, who would it be and why?
What, do they have to be still alive or?
No, listen, you've got all power on this one.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously the Beatles. The Beatles. I mean, even though the Beach Boys were my number one band, I've seen them 100 times. I saw 50 solo Brian Wilson shows. I've never seen the Beatles. I actually grew up in New Jersey, but when they were at Shea Stadium, I was like 11 years old. I almost ran away from home to go see them, but unfortunately I didn't. So I regret that to this day. So yeah, the Beatles, hands down.
It's an easy one. All right, well,
Very nice.
We kind of touched on this in the open and before we got started too deep, but I'm going to ask anyway. Wayne, what are some of your favorite record shows to attend? You said you and Gary kind of divide and conquer, but you personally, what are some of your favorite shows to hit regularly on the circuit?
Okay, well, I'll tell you about one that was the most amazing show ever. It used to have a record show in Barcelona. Unfortunately, it ended about 10 years ago, but that was just an unbelievable show. They'd get 40,000 people through the door, and it was just insane. It was incredible, but it ended about 10 years ago, and then it got taken over by a show at Utrecht in the Netherlands, and that's a pretty amazing show, which I was doing up until about 3 years ago. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they shut it down and it never reopened. So that one's over now. So basically what I'm left with now is basically I do Beatle conventions. I've been doing used to be called the Beatle Fest. Now it's called the Fest for Beatle Fans. Used to have them the New York area, LA and Chicago. LA ended like 10, 15 years ago, but I still do Chicago and it's either New Jersey or New York area. I do them every year, and they were a lot of fun. They're not what they were. I mean, in the old days, they'd get 7,000 or 8,000 people through the door. Now they get 2,000 or 3,000, but it's just a lot of fun. You know, I see Beatles fans or fanatics from all over the world coming there, going crazy over, the guest artists, the groups, and unfortunately, not as many collectors as there used to be. But again, it's still fun. I bring some really cool stuff there, and I do sell some, pretty good stuff there, but not what I used to be, but they're still probably my favorites that are existing. So unfortunately, the other ones are gone. I mean, Austin, Gary does, and WFMU. They're his two favorite shows.
Cool. Well, we'll be at WFMU this year, so I guess we'll have to introduce ourselves to your brother. Would love to see you there, but yeah, if you can't make it, maybe we can meet up with your brother.
Yeah. I've done it once. One of these days, I may pop up there if I have time. So
nice. I think the last thing I have is is there anything on the horizon? Any changes? Any big things coming from Rockaway Records? Like expansion. You guys are going to do another location, or is another page for the website? I mean, anything that you guys are thinking about kind of doing?
No plans to expand. I mean, just no need for it. Like I said, the good stuff sells so quick. So even though we're tiny space now, we got way more room than we need. My only plans are to get a little more aggressive in advertising to get better collections. Like I said, I'm competing with billion-dollar companies to get these collectibles, so that makes it a little difficult. So I got to convince people that they're going to do better coming to me, which is true about 90% of the time. I mean, I have to admit it, every now and then the auction houses do get crazy prices on things. But on the other hand, give you an example, one time there was a belt buckle owned by John Lennon in one of the major auction houses, and I happen to know the history on it. And they just did a simple listing, belt buckle owned by John Lennon. I won it for $4,000. sold it for $15,000 almost instantly.
Wow.
So the consigner ended up with about $2,500. If he came to me, I would have given him 10 grand cash on the spot for it without even thinking about it. But, I did my research. Within 10 minutes, I had 4 pictures of John Lennon wearing it. I dug deeper and told the whole story. So it was an easy $15,000 item instead of a $4,000 item. So, but that's the message I'm trying to get across to people, that auctions are not always the way to go. You get lucky sometimes, or another example with eBay. Local collector once came in with a rare Beatle record. I offered him $2,000 for it. He said, "Nah, I'll just put it on eBay. Why sell it to a dealer?" So I bid. He told me when he was going to list it, so I bid $2,000 on it. Got it for $300. Nobody bid against me.
Wow.
So he ended up with after fees, about $250. It's like auctions are just hit and miss. Every now and then you get lucky. Most of the times, not so much. So that's my plan. How do I get that message across to people with great collections? That's my goal.
Well, we're trying to do our part here by spreading the word, and I think it's like you said, you're paying fair prices for great stuff, and people don't have to worry about those huge fees that they're going to get hit with in the auction houses.
Oh yeah, because the auction houses kind of tell you, oh, we only take 15%. They forget to mention there's 25% buyer's fee too. So they actually get closer to 40% of the selling price with no risk, no guarantees, and they usually start the item at half what it's worth. So, and if sometimes it goes for that. So people do get burned a lot in auctions.
No, thank you, is what I would say. I am a very risk-averse person. So I'm sure our audience appreciates you, Wayne, sharing that. And obviously, now we've all come out better for this conversation. You've survived the lightning round, Wayne. It's not easy to do. It looks like you're all intact. Looks like your store is still intact. So I'd be remiss if I didn't. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. Had a lot of fun.
Thanks, Wayne.
Spinz, anything else you want to say in closing?
No, this was great. I was going to mention, did you want to have a quick look at our showroom? Because I got an iPad here. I could just scan it real quick if you want, if you have time.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go to the showroom. That's where the cool stuff is.
All right.
Get ready to FOMO out now, concert buddy.
This is our back room with our back stock, but now we're walking into the showroom. I just bought this today, a Pulp Fiction award. Kind of cool. And I'll just scan around here. And if you want me to focus on anything, I can. Like here's a few Beatle items in there.
Nice.
Very cool.
What's the one thing if I came in there or Spinz came in there, Wayne, that's the showstopper? What's the showstopper piece right now?
Well, probably signed Beatle album for $100 grand. That's pretty.
I'll take 2.
That's pretty cool. But also a lot of fun stuff. I love stuff like the Led Zeppelin blimps. They're not huge money, but I mean they're just cool. I like the cool stuff. The memorabilia is my
Those are
thing.
cool.
Gary usually does most of the vinyl. I focus on the memorabilia stuff.
Right.
To me, it's more exciting. The posters, T-shirts.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love buying T-shirt collections. People are usually impressed because unfortunately, half the times I go look at a collection, I just donated my T-shirts to Goodwill.
Ah.
A lot of gold record awards. I specialize in those. By Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. That's kind of cool.
Wow.
Eagles signed guitar. So
you got more fires per square foot than any other spot I've seen.
Hey, I'm going to ask you one more thing before we sign off. Being in the LA metropolitan region, do you feel that gives you a competitive advantage? Because obviously having those relationships with a lot of the record studios and the A&R people and all that kind of stuff. Do you think if you were in like Minnesota that you'd be able to find this much red hot heat stuff.
Oh, definitely not. But on the other hand, I travel to LA for great collections. Like I said, the distance doesn't matter. Like I said, I'll go there for a valuable collection. But, it's got to be a great collection to have, or a special treat. It's got to be a super great collection.
Awesome. Well, Wayne, I feel like I should have paid a ticket. Spinz, you got $5. We should have given this man money to take us around to see this stuff. I mean, what a pleasure. But
it's better than Disneyland.
A plus. Well, Wayne, I want to thank you from myself, from Spinz, and from our audience for taking us through the journey of the origins of your store and some of these awesome stories. And of course, buyer beware. Like, it's very important. Like, you definitely express the message earnestly, and it's really appreciated that buyers should always be a little cautious with what they see and what they buy. So thank you, Wayne, and there he goes.
And like that, he was gone.
He's gone. Well, Spinz, what did you think about that?
No, it was great. I mean, it's fun. I think I learned a lot. I think it's exciting stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff's going to be out of my price range, but still just incredible stuff that's fun to just look at and and imagine what could be. And really hot tip on the graded stuff, and something I hadn't really considered. Just be cautious out there when you are buying these graded records, because things are not always as they seem. And it is tough. He raises a great point. You don't always know what by just looking at it in a shrink wrap, which pressing it is. So just be really careful about that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's like anything else. It's if it has high value, high expectation, but also a high level of fraudulence. And I know that, knock on wood, I don't feel like the times I've bucked up for things, not only in this space, vinyl, collectibles, music, etc., but I'd like to think I've been pretty fortunate. But the law of averages says that I've probably got some stuff that is probably not what I think it is. So ignorance is bliss. I'll just leave it.
Exactly. Once it's in the collection, don't think about it.
Awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. I want to thank Wayne. I didn't get to tell him, obviously, if you've ever, friend of the show, Jim Kaplan at Record Collector News, if you've picked up any of those over the years, especially on the West Coast, Rockaway usually has one of those big old spreads in there. So they do a nice job of, trying to reach out and trying to bring those collections in. So it was nice to actually put a face with the business this time around. So that's all I got, Spinz. It was fun. We should do this again sometime. We will make sure that America Online is not the official sponsor of our Guest Connection. And no, I'm just having fun. Awesome. Well, thanks, buddies. It's a great adventure. Vinyl Community Podcast. If you don't know, we've got content 2 times a week. Usually it's by these two Joes. We're doing some surface noise action. So if you don't know, now you know. I want to thank our regulars who do download, subscribe, all that stuff. Hit that like button if you like what you heard here. We appreciate it. And I guess that's all she wrote. So until next time, thank you, buddies. We'll talk to you soon.